Hello, you are listening to the C Squared podcast with me, Holly, and Curtis. That's right, I've switched our names around again because I am gradually taking over. But today we are here with the lovely Cara Bridymore, who is a wonderful photographer and the owner of Screams Media. So thank you, Cara, for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
And for a very first question, we always ask the first guest. We always ask this I can't talk today. Always messing me up. But thank you for being here, Cara. And the very first question that we have is the one we ask every guest, which is to give a little nutshell version of who you are and what you do, your little background.
So I'm Cara. I am from Ontario, Canada. I own Screams Media, which is basically a company that works with all different genres of media, music, movies, pretty much anything you can think of. But I, in particular, am a touring photojournalist with metal and pop punk. I've been into photography ever since I was a very little girl. Like I got my first camera at 7 years old, and I dove into shooting shows as a teenager, and it's just built up to where I am now.
As a follow-up question on that, is this your full-time gig or no?
It usually is now. Because of COVID, it's been like, especially in like America and Canada, but things are slowly starting to open back up. So yay, I'm hoping that it's going to go back to the way it was before COVID.
Makes sense. And then one more follow-up question on that. So basically you said that you're kind of like a touring photographer. So does that, just to clarify for the listeners, does that mean like bands hire you to go out on tour with them, or how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. So I will talk to a band or a manager or a record company, and they will hire me on to travel with the band and pretty much cover every aspect of it. So all access to everything. And I will take photos, videos, and do a write-up at the very end of it for them to share around or use however they want.
Nice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. Fun.
Over to you, Holly.
Yeah, you've kind of like touched on this a little bit, but it'd be cool to know a little bit more about how you got into photography, because like you said, you're self-taught. So how did you sort of get all the knowledge that you needed for the type of work that you do?
So in high school, I took film photography a lot as an extra art elective. And one year for one of the classes, my photography teacher had a friend who was touring with, I think it was like Children of Bodom or something like that at the time. And I was just like, what the heck? I can't believe that this guy actually is doing this work. So I became super invested in that. And I started taking the camera that I had, just a small little point and shoot that I took everywhere, to shows. And I was terrible at first. Like, I had no idea what I was doing, and I was blinding the bands and everything with the flash and just being terrible, getting mostly fingerprint shots over the lens. But I just kept going and I didn't give up. And along the way, I met different photographers who gave me tips and tricks. And through trial and error, I just ended up learning a lot more. And I ended up creating my own style, which as a photographer, you really need to in order to be able to stand out.
So I'm kind of going to go off the rails already, Holly. I'm sorry.
That is fine.
Because I want to rephrase this question just a little bit. So basically the question, so don't answer yet because I'm going to rephrase it. But basically we were going to ask how important you think it is for bands to have high quality visual materials for promotional purposes. But I want to rephrase this into what do you think are some of the opportunities a band will lose if they do not have high quality visuals for promotional purposes?
Oh my goodness. Well, 100%. If a band is trying to go in and be taken seriously in any sort of media aspect, they need to have an EPK. So their electronic press kit needs to be on point, and that includes all different types of media to be looking at. And photography is especially important because that is what other media companies will use as headers for articles or whatever they need in order to promote you. And if you don't have good pictures, they're not going to take you seriously because you're not taking your band seriously, kind of, in the long run.
That makes sense. So, like, just an aside for anybody who's listening, I know that we at C Squared, at least, like, if you don't have high quality pictures, like especially during the pandemic, what we're running into is like print magazines, especially, will not cover your band if you have low quality pictures.
Exactly.
So, let me just make sure I'm not skipping over a future question that Holly had before I get into this. Okay, I think we're good. So, are you willing to kind of go over like what kind of a budget a band should have to get good photographs?
Well, that really depends. I mean, you can have somebody who's your local photographer who is genius and just hasn't had the opportunity yet to showcase their work, who will do something as easy as a merch trade-off with you. I mean, that's how I started out, was just, I will do your first 3 songs if you give me a couple pieces of merch. Anywhere between a trade-off to maybe, I don't know, as a new person, $20 to $100 Canadian. If you're working through photographers that are, hired through an actual record company or something like that, you're looking upwards to like 300 to 600 Canadian, because you're getting what you pay for, essentially.
Cool. So now, just to clarify on something, before I ask this next question, which is to do with money. Now, I assume it's going to change if the band is a bigger band versus if they're a smaller band, correct?
Yes, exactly. It really all depends on who you're working with, what their status is, or what companies they are working under.
Yeah.
Because it's really just a matter of talking to a photographer whose photos you're really digging and taking it from there, because a lot of photographers also will have payment plans or budget plans, or be able to work with like an individual band on whatever works for them at that time.
Fair enough. Now, forgive me, I probably should have asked you this before we got on the call, but all the bands on your site are ones that you've worked with, right?
Yes.
So now, like, you got some people, like you got whatchamacallit, Kubakan, who's in Texas. How do you kind of arrange you doing the?
So a lot of these things, so I do things where I'm touring and it's all access, and then I have other things where I'm working with other media companies like Asher Media Relations or Adam Splitter PR. They are incredible people who will get all of this information, send it off to other media companies, and then from there, we can take that information and do our own specific write-ups.
Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense then. That
Yeah.
makes total cool. So I think that was all the follow-up I had on that question.
Awesome.
Cool. So I guess it would be interesting to know if there are any like particular, I don't know, maybe like mistakes or just little errors that you maybe notice that bands do with their photos that they should maybe work on. Because something that I kind of notice quality wise is there's quality as in like, pixel size.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they send us like a 10 pixel image and we're like, yeah, we can't, that's not going to go on anything. But there's also quality like with staging and lighting and background and outfits and, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So if there's like, I don't know, anything that you've maybe noticed that bands do that they could easily, hopefully improve on.
So I think the main thing is just quality, and I even run into this issue myself. So many social media sites will compress an image. So no matter how high of a quality you get sent, depending on if you are downloading it on your phone, that compresses the quality a heck of a lot more than if you were to download it straight on like your desktop or something, because then you're getting the full resolution of it. So I think a lot of times bands just have to remember, like, actually to download things on a PC versus their phone if they're going to actually use it. Another thing I think is positioning. A lot of people will think, oh, it's, it's just, we're going to stand like this or like this, and, we're super tough and that's metal and that's hardcore. And it's like, but it's not, make eye connection with your photographer and stand how is comfortable to you, because that is the most authentic positioning that you can possibly get. And make sure you have your sunglasses and hats off, because you want to be cohesive. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at pictures and I'm like, why didn't they take off their sunglasses? That's just a pet peeve of mine. So that's it.
What-
That's it.
On the low. What if they're like, yeah, that's our image? Like, what would you do in that case?
Oh, well, if that's their image and that's their gimmick, then I am all for it. Then make sure that everybody is wearing goofy sunglasses or different colored, big
That's
chunkers. Have fun with it in that point.
So, okay, so what would be your advice to people for getting the best quality photos though for like an independent band? Like, let's say they don't have the budget to hire a photographer, they can't come up with $100, $200 or whatever that could is. Like, what would you say would be, what can they do, if anything? If any.
Okay, well, if, like I said before, if you don't have the budget, then put out an open call to look for photographers in your area who are trying to grow. Because just like a band, your local photographers have to start somewhere. And it's great if you can start out and work with your local bands, and then you can become friends and build these people up and watch each other grow. That way, you're not putting out a whole bunch of money, and you're making good networking connections along the way for both sides.
Fair enough. So now let's say, I don't want to phrase this. So let's say a band wants to hire a photographer. What would you say would be the qualities that they should be looking for, or the questions they should be asking prior to engaging them?
So they should definitely be asking what the purpose is, because there's a difference if you're going to shoot a live show, and there's a difference if you're going to shoot portrait photography. Because if they want to do a live show, you have to make sure then that you have the media or guest list access when you go in. Let's be fair, because sometimes you run into security who's like, and not going to have it unless you have that access. So it's always safe to go about it in the best way possible.
Clarify on that then. So, because you said a few things there, but just clarify a little bit if you can.
On what point?
Well, I don't know, like the whole thing. Like, let's say, like, maybe I wasn't clear in my question. I'm just trying to think how I want to phrase it. So, like, let's say, how do you kind of determine that the person that you're thinking about working with is legit, that they're going to do a good job, that type of thing?
It's a matter of asking them for any type of past proof. I mean, if they're somebody who's very, very interested in photography,
yeah,
even if it's just been like going to a show just to take pictures for fun on their phone, or any type of Instagram picture, ask them to see, their style, so you know what you're working with. Another important thing I think to look for is the brightness of an image. You can tell if there's been a flash used. It's very obvious to tell if there's flash used on a picture. And I think it's important, especially in low light venues, if a band is looking for a photographer, to find a person who doesn't shoot with flash. That way they're not being blinded by that quick, sudden brightness, because then they can't see anything they're doing. That's been a huge complaint that I have heard from a lot of bands in the past.
Now this, have you done just like straight photography for bands, or has it all just been mainly live, out of curiosity?
Both.
Okay, so I don't want to phrase this, do you think a band really needs to have a lot of live shots, and if so, why, versus like promo photos, I guess is what I'm saying?
I don't think it's important to have a lot of live shots, but I think it is important to definitely showcase some, because it shows your energy, it shows your setup, and it generally just gives a style of the type of performance that you put out. And it's always good for fans to see that. Fans like seeing photos, videos, that type of stuff that they can interact with and share.
How many promo photos do you think a band should be aiming to have, out of curiosity?
Promotional wise, I think if they're starting out, you want like at least 1 to 3 pictures. That way you have a cover photo, you have a display picture, and then you have something else that you can share along the line. As you become a bigger band, I think it's important to get promotional shots at least once a year at some point, just to update. You never know what band members are still going to be in or who's going to be integrated in. And it's just always nice to keep your lineup looking as updated as possible.
As a side note, that's one of my pet peeves is when a band will send us old pictures because it's frustrating. And then later they'll bitch about the fact that an old member is showing up on the site.
I feel that. I feel that 100%. Right? Just send me the updated thing then. Come on, guys. What am I supposed to do? I'm not a mind reader.
Exactly. I don't know that that's Joe and not Bob. I don't fucking know who these people are. To be blunt. Holly, I'm going to go off the rails here, so you got to save me here. So please take over before I start saying something.
That sounds ominous. Okay.
I'm not here. Just in general is what I'm saying. But yeah, you got to take over now before I rant.
Fine. Oh, I guess I'd be interested to know then, like, what's your favorite, like personally, what's like your favorite aspect of like doing all of this photography and touring and everything?
I actually love I love being able to meet different people in different places, because when I'm touring with a band, it's amazing to see how much love and respect that they get, or how much energy that they put out night after night, and how many people come out just to see them. And as the tour photographer, I'm there, taking pictures of the bands with all of their fans and stuff like that at one point of the night at the merch table or whatever. And that is just such an incredible experience to actually meet all of these people. And then over like the week after, have my page or something be tagged in because they decided to use my picture. It's just, it's like the coolest feeling.
Ooh.
No, I totally get that. Yeah.
Ooh.
Go on.
Now we're going to go into
something.
Yeah, what's up?
So photography credits. Can you give a photographer's viewpoint on why the photographer should always be credited?
Okay, so
does it even
okay, let's go. This is so important, because this is like, if you are doing anything in your life that is work, you want to be credited for it. If you are even going to a normal 9 to 5 day, like 9 to 5 job, you want to be credited in your paycheck for that. It is the same thing as a photographer. We are doing this work, we are putting ourselves out there. Sometimes we're doing it for very cheap, or we're helping out people, or it's a networking cause. And the whole point of networking is, to be able to do that give and take. So for somebody to spend so much time doing a picture to not have it credited is kind of like a slap in the face. But when you do get credited, it's the best feeling in the world, almost like if you're a band and you're getting, the applause at the end of the show or something like that. It's just, that is the feeling that we go for. That's why we do what we do.
So how do you think you can make it so that way people do remember to credit the photographer? Because I gotta admit, I'm horrible with this. I'm admitting it right now. I'm fucking horrible with this, and I forget all the time. People forget to tell me the credit. They don't go in the press kits half the time. I'm sorry the way it goes, and you can be mad at me, but how do you think this problem can be resolved?
So honestly, a lot of the time it's not even your fault. It's the person who is sending you what we're sending you. So even when I'm working with bands, I make sure that I write out a little note, a little freaking notepad or Google Docs thing, and I screenshot it and I add it in with my pictures that says, hey guys, if you're going to credit this, make sure to credit my name on this website, or this account and this account on these social media accounts. Just so it's there. They can't forget if it's always included in the first picture in the entire lot.
Fair. Where else do I want to go with the crediting? I think I'm done on the crediting. So Holly, take over again for another minute. I have a question after you got your next one, and it's going to be off the rail.
Okay. I'm trying to think of something a bit different. Oh, here we go. What's your favorite road sign?
My favorite road. Wait, what? My favorite road sign?
It's a philosophical question, right?
No, but like, did you say like road sign?
Yeah, like road sign.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Well,
sorry, it's my accent. It's
my favorite road sign then. Okay, there's one that's like a deer crossing, but in Canada in wintertime, so many people put a little red dot on the nose, so it's a reindeer crossing, and it's my favorite thing to see every Christmas.
Okay, that's amazing. Yeah, there you go.
It's magical, why not?
Well, now that Holly's completely thrown us off the rails, I wasn't even far off the fucking rails. I can't even what I was gonna say anymore. Let's talk for a minute here. So what do you have currently going for projects, if you're willing to talk about?
So right now I have a couple of European festivals coming up.
Okay.
One of them I can't announce yet because it hasn't really been announced. And then there's Awful Fest in Manchester, which is a whole bunch of very heavy slam type of bands coming together. So that's going to be nasty. Pretty much just a whole bunch of smaller little dates coming up. There may be a tour and around August, September. But again, this is stuff that I can't announce because the bands haven't announced them yet, but things that I'm waiting to be able to announce.
Get it. What are you currently, or have you currently worked on that you can talk about that?
So right now I am working on a couple of lyric videos and audio visualizers because I do that type of stuff as well for bands. For a couple local bands called Null and Wither Within. They're like grindcore type of grimy type of music, Nintendo core. It's really, really fun. Totally check them out. And I have a couple of shows coming up with Cranium in Denmark. So it's, like I said, I have a whole bunch of things coming up, but it's just a matter of getting there and being able to do it right now.
Fair. So we only have like 10 more minutes left, but you mentioned lyric videos. I didn't know you did lyric videos. So what kind of a budget should a band be looking at when they want to get a lyric video done? Because it's so all over the place.
Yeah.
I've
So
heard like $100 to $5,000.
Heck yeah. So it really depends. If you want to do somebody who's doing like their own animations and their own graphics and doing a lot of the work themselves, then that's when you're looking into a couple grand. If you have a basic person, just your basic videographer who has your idea and is willing to work with you and compromise ideas to come in and do your point and shoot and maybe spend 2 weeks to a month editing it, 600, 700 Canadian dollars is a good starting point. Okay. But cool. Yeah, so I honestly, the cheapest that you could probably find for somebody who's doing it professionally is maybe $500. Okay, but anything lower than that is your people who are, still learning and just, want to take a chance just as much as you do. So.
And that also depends upon length too, I assume, because I've any quotes I've ever heard also say it has to be between this length and that length. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, that goes back to my first point of just how much is initially going into it for the premise of it. How much is how long it's going to be, how much of their own work or animation is going to be put into it, etc.
Now, one question I have about, do you do a lot of lyric videos or is this like just a minor service?
No, I don't do a whole heck of a lot of lyric videos. See, that's something that I'm still learning at myself. I'm still trying it out. I'm having fun with it, but I can, if a band comes to me, I'll be like, yeah, I'll do it for, very cheap amount because I'm still learning, but I can also reference you to people who I know can do it properly.
Cool. Okay. Well, part of the reason why I asked, and this probably also goes to your photography and the rest of the stuff you do, is how do you kind of qualify clients before you take them, or is it like I'll do anybody, doesn't matter who, or do you have like I look for this and I will only take bands in this style or of this quality?
So at Screams Media, we're open to all genres, and it's from fans for fans. We try to give a very open type of experience to everybody who's interested in music. Yep. That being said, I myself primarily focus on metal and stuff like that, but The site itself, it's anybody can join in. All that you have to do is just send a message or an email and send me a link to your song or your EPK, and I'll check it out. And if I vibe with it as a fan, then I'm going to share it to other fans.
Fair. So like, let's say someone wanted to get some photography from you though, would you have to check out their work prior to doing it? Or would you just be like, no, I'm doing it because you're...
Oh no, when it comes to photography, I'm all for it because that's only helping them out in the long run. You need that as a band. So if a band comes to me and they don't have any pictures, let's do it. I am all for it.
What I mean, do you also have to check their music and stuff is what I'm asking.
No, no, not necessarily, because it's not as if I am, I'm not promoting them at that point on Scream's media. They are hiring me. So any of my photos are already, the photos I take are sold off at that point. So it doesn't matter if I do or don't like the band or the music, because I've still been paid. You've still gotten what you came out for, and it's been the fair trade.
So we could have like
that's the difference. Yeah. It doesn't matter. I'm all for helping out when it comes to photography. Yeah, if a band needs photos, let's do it.
Cool. Yeah, I just wasn't sure what the process was behind it. If you like actually were like, okay, well, I have to put this out. Is there any reason that you would, obviously, racism or something like that, why you would turn a band down for services in general, other than the obvious ones like that?
So I have actually had to do this in the past, and it's only been once, but I have turned down a band because they have been very, very ignorant. Like, if you are a starting out band and you have this huge ego, it's not going to get you far. This band came in expecting free pictures and to bring in a huge pile of guests and everything for free. And it was like, they were turned away and they lost their temper and took it out on the promoter, took it out on the other bands, took it out on us there, and still had to play their set and expected pictures. And I'm like, no, I am not going to work with you. I'm not going to promote you, because this behavior is literally disgusting in our music scene. And in metal, honestly, let's be real, people already have a bad enough rep about us that we need to not put out that type of image. Like, that's just not cool.
I agree. So we're running out of time. Holly, do you have any final questions for Kara?
Just sort of what you were saying. I don't know if you saw, there's this thing going on Facebook recently. I think it was kind of more in the UK, so you might not have seen it, where this band were refusing to pay the live photographer, basically, because they were like, we're a hardcore band, we don't need to pay for things. It's just like, seriously?
I can't stand that. Like, come on. If you're working with somebody, there has to be some sort of fair trade. That's life. You don't get things for free. It doesn't matter if you're in music or any type of business. People with that mindset, it's just like, you're the type of people who are not meant to be in this scene.
Okay, so again, forgive me if you don't want to talk about this, and if you don't, just tell me to shut up and I will. Do you guys don't get paid in advance? You guys have to wait till after the pictures are taken? Is that how it goes?
It really depends on the band that you're working with, and the photographer itself. A lot of bands will want to pay you upfront just to make sure that they have booked your time and that you are going to be there. Me, I'm like, it's a show. I'm going to show up no matter what, so you guys can pay me after the set. That it just really depends on how you work.
So, okay, again, if you don't want to talk about it, I'm now that we've opened it up, and I think with these types of things, and I know we don't have much time, but okay, so like, let's say that you did a show for a band and then they were like, I don't like the pictures, and then they don't want to pay you. What do you do in that case then?
Well, in that case, then see, I usually give a sneak peek to a band before I give them all the pictures so that I can get their feedback. I will send maybe 3 to 5 pictures and be like, hey, what do you guys think of this style, this coloring, blah, blah, blah. If they're not for it, I will edit it up in the way that they are, so we compromise. If they're digging it, I'm like, okay, cool. And I will go through and I know that they're going to use it, but I will always make sure, because I've run into that problem before. Now I've, learned from my own mistakes to make sure just to send a sneak peek, gauge the band's reaction, and then you can take it from there before you're spending hours and hours editing all the pictures for nothing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is couldn't the band then just be like, well, fuck you, I'm not paying you, and then just keep the pictures and then use them? So
yeah, and you know what though, I think pretty much at that point, if a band's like that, they would do that probably to anybody.
agreed. Yeah, I'm
You
just
know, but
thinking.
it's a very real possibility that you're sending off something in the band's like, I am not happy at all, I don't want to pay you, or
Yeah.
I want a refund. And at that point, then yeah, you either have to decide, they're right and I want to keep my reputation and build up, or I'm going to ignore them and be blasted all over social media.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're saying. Same thing happens in PR sometimes where you're just like,
Yeah.
But
It's
anyways,
like you got to play your cards right. You have to, it's all about being logical. You can't be
Yeah.
dumb.
Yeah, of course. Okay, cool. Holly, do we have anything else for Kara before we end off?
I think we've covered quite a lot.
I think so too.
I'm good at mine.
Kara, did we miss anything that we should have asked you about that we didn't ask you about that you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so, but I'll just throw out a quick plug for Screams Media. If anybody wants to check out or work with us, we have people, I have people who work for me in Canada, the United States, Europe, and Australia. So we can pretty much set up band photo shoots or tours or shows or PR just about anywhere that a band is interested to work with us.
And I just realized I am not following you on social media, and I have just rectified that mistake myself.
Thank you. Awesome.
So thank you again for coming on with us. And with that, we are going to end off here.